distinguished friends, guests, and fellow lovers of liberty and truth. It's a great honor and a real pleasure to be here with you today. I want to start by sincerely thanking the organizers for inviting me to speak at this special event celebrating the 100th anniversary of Murray Rothbard. Today, we are witnessing the largest libertarian event in the history of Portugal. A massive congratulations to all of you who worked so hard to make it happen. I unfortunately never had the privilege of meeting Murray Rothbard. When he left us in January 1995, I was only 5 years old. So even if I've met him, my only contribution to a hypothetical conversation would have been a childlike imposto é roubo. Taxation is theft in Portuguese. However, growing up in the 90s gave me the fortune of experiencing the rise of the internet itself, the greatest frontier of freedom humanity has seen since the British colonies in America in the 18th century. In the decades following Mr. Liberty passing, the cyberspace was developing, a place where cypherpunks, some libertarians, anarcocapitalists, other objectivists, followers of Ayn Rand, believed that private property could be protected by strong cryptography and where voluntary contracts could flourish far from state violence. In 1995, the same year that Rothbard died, Extropy number 15, a futurist magazine, had a whole segment dedicated to electronic money and competing private currencies. On the first few pages, there's a table titled Future Forecasts, in which the authors predict when various major milestones enabled by advancing technology are likely to occur. Examples include 1 million people using electronic cash, untaxable economy using electronic cash surpassing 100 billions a year, most law enforcement privatized, most law choice privatized, national defense privatized, betting markets as a big policy influence. For them, extropians and cypherpunks, the internet was not only a communication protocol or a way to dematerialize tangible goods such as books or photos. The internet was also a place to implement libertarian ethics, where natural rights could be respected and enforced without the need for state violence. Rothbard did not see the profound changes in our economy in the digital age, nor the birth of Bitcoin. In his best body of work, I could not find any reference to the idea of peer-to-peer electronic money or to the libertarian potential of internet itself. That's why today I offer what I consider the most honest possible tribute. Explain to Murray Rothbard, as if he was sitting here in the front row, how the existence of Bitcoin makes us rethink two important topics on economics: the question of the origin of money and the typology of monetary objects, or to use Karl Menger's term, the typology of all the things generally accepted as media of exchange. Murray, welcome. Let's talk about money, one of your favorite subjects. Dear Murray, I'm going to tell you something you may not believe. In 2008, 13 years after your death, a major financial crisis occurred caused by fiat money and years of artificial credit expansion, exactly as you had predicted. Unlike the Great Depression of 1929, we still don't have a single word to describe what happened that year. Some call it the Great Financial Crisis, the GFC. Others, the subprime mortgage crisis, or Great Recession of 2008, 2009, or simply 2008 financial crisis. For this event that we don't know how to name, instead of allowing the liquidation of malinvestments, central banks responded with a gigantic monetary experiment. that we now call QE, quantitative easing, the printing of trillions of dollars, euros, and yen, and the purchase of assets by central banks at higher prices, and artificially near zero interest rates for more than a decade. You would certainly have a lot to say about those measures. But this time was truly different. Something very important was brewing, far from the headlines of the world's biggest newspapers, and far from the mouths and minds of usual fiat money high priests. Your ideas, Murray Rothbard, were being discussed in an obscure corner of the internet. We don't know who these people were, but they were well versed in cryptography and in your work. Bitcoin, this new kind of internet money, was first proposed at the height of the financial crisis, but its first transaction occurred only in January 2009. Less than 2 years later, after the invention of Bitcoin on July 27, 2010, an anonymous user named XC opened a thread titled Bitcoin does not violate Mises regression theorem, citing your magnum opus, Man, Economy, and State, specifically pages 207 to 275, arguing that Bitcoin's existence was not a violation of the regression theorem. To understand what kind of money was created and how could one day acquire exchange value, they turned to your work, Mr. Rothbard. Satoshi Nakamoto, an anonymous who first proposed Bitcoin, replied XC's post, offering a thought experiment. Imagine a base metal as scarce as gold, yet useless for practical purposes except one magical property. It can be transported over communications channel. 1 month later, Satoshi added that Bitcoin units were more like a collectible or a commodity than shares in a company having no dividends or future cash flows. Let's pause for a moment to understand the nature and the ontological importance of this discussion. A new monetary good has been created, and those early adopters face two types of problems. The problem of the origin of its value and the problem of typology of money. I know this kind of discussion will catch your attention, Mr. Rothbard. Any proposal for a new money must obey Mises' regression theorem and must be understood under Mises' typology expressed in 1912. This theme was so important to you, Mr. Rothbard, that in a 1983 paper called The Case for Genuine Gold Dollar, you argued against Hayek's proposal for free competition and denationalization of money by saying, even the removal of legal tender privilege would not work, for the new names will not have emerged out of useful commodities on the free market, as the regression theorem demonstrates they must. If I understood you correctly, Hayek's proposal fails to distinguish between the issuance of a free market money and its usefulness to be adopted and used as a medium of exchange. Individuals should be allowed to create new money to compete with existing money, but there's no economic reason for the new currency to be accepted. Mises' regression theorem demonstrated that money must first originate as useful commodity. That's why those early discussions about the nature of Bitcoin were so important. But Mr. Rothbard, those people, despite being well versed in libertarian theory, were engineers and cryptographers, not theorists or historians. Their role was not to write libertarian economic treatises like you did. Their role was to write code. Yet, those short dialogues give us important clues about the new monetary good that was emerging. The investigation by those Bitcoin enthusiasts was not a historical one, not even a theoretical one. They were not investigating our shared monetary past as Karl Menger did in 1892 on the origins of money. The birth of money was being reenacted before their eyes in the new territory, the cyberspace. As It was as if they were looking for physical analogies from the world of atoms, seashells, and precious metals to the world of bits. The digital realm is typically one of abundance and easy copying. Bitcoin's breakthrough was creating rival digital scarcity on a non-rival environment, an engineer feat that reenacted the birth of money in cyberspace, confirming rather than violating the regression theorem. Cryptographic keys grant exclusive and forcible control akin to physical possession. Though non-material, it achieves rigorous scarcity through the protocol. Units can be bought and sold by anyone but cannot be double spent. The total supply is capped at 21 million, enforced by consensus, not by decree or natural attributes. To Aristotle, money, numisma, must possess specific properties to serve as a reliable medium facilitating commutative justice, the justice that comes from the free exchange from individuals. In Nicomachean Ethics and Politics, he tied the qualities of the numisma to tangible material substance. A good numisma must be durable, divisible, fungible, portable, and scarce. Those attributes must now exist in code, so this not new form of money one day could be used as a general medium of exchange. Unlike historical commodities that relied on material anchors later eroded by the state intervention, Bitcoin embeds its soundness directly on the protocol. With those attributes in mind, we can now revisit Mises' typology proposed in 1912 in his classic De Theorie des Gelds und der Umlaufsmittel, that was wrongly translated to the theory of money and credit, when the correct translation should have been the theory of money and fiduciary media. Technology gave us a money in the narrow sense that's neither fiat, like in legal tender or state decree, nor credit, no debtor creditor relationship. It's not also a type of money substitute, either money certificates 100% redeemable for money, or fiduciary media not backed by money. It's the good itself, a bearer asset, upon which one could build a whole new infrastructure of layers based on cryptographic proof to minimize the need for trust. A new commodity money that now can be based for better money substitutes, different layers for faster and more anonymous transactions. Those layers can also use cryptography to minimize the risk of fractional reserve and prevent the emergence of fiduciary media without 100% back. Linguistic differences can also help to distinguish economic from historical ideas of commodity. Commodity money in standard English, in the standard English translation of that is the standard English translation of the German Sachgeld. Geld means money, while Sache means thing in abstract sense, unlike Ding, which is only a physical object. In an economic sense, commodity money, the thing money, is a good exchangeable with goods of the same type. It also functions directly as money, bought and sold on an open market with many consumers and producers, with no need for banks, legal privileges, promises, or counterparty risk. Bitcoin is an example that mathematical proofs and consensus can manifest a thing in abstract sense that also excels in the classic monetary attributes. In your classic, what has the government done to your money? To our money, what you considered our money was simply gold. So the question that you've answered was, what has the government done to gold? To understand your book, is necessary to undo the workings of almost 100 years of cartelism and Keynesianism that conflicted money with piece of paper painted and signed by politicians. You explained that once gold was held in banks and receipts circulated, they were able to expand the monetary supply through fiduciary media, generate boom and bust cycles, confiscate value through inflation. Bitcoin eliminates this vulnerability. No central vault is needed. Custody is sovereign. Whoever holds the private keys controls the money. It cannot be confiscated nor inflated by decree. Transfers are global and censorship resistant. It is, in effect, digital gold that has learned from the failures of physical gold with better spatial and temporal salability. Meanwhile, fiat money, the institutionalized counterfeit you denounced, continues its work. Bitcoins restore individual control over time and savings. It creates conditions for a predictable money supply, the ideal environment you described for flourishing markets, falling real prices, lowering our time preference, allowing for capital formation and real prosperity. But beyond economics, Bitcoin embodies your deeper libertarian ethics. One of your greatest theoretical contributions in moral philosophy was grounding natural rights in self ownership, from one's body to the fruits of labor to voluntary contracts. Bitcoin extends this to the digital realm, allowing for individuals to keep the fruits of their labor without counterparty risk, opting out the state's monetary monopoly, the very criminal organization you identified as living by violating property rights. Today, Bitcoin is now a global final settlement layer for anyone in the world. Last year only, it settled the equivalent of $25 trillion without banks, without political entities. Murray, I don't want to convince you to become a Bitcoiner. I just want to say that technology gave us a new opportunity to revisit your intellectual legacy through a new monetary technology that's now used by billions of people around the world and is now more than $1 trillion network. It grew organically through the usefulness of to its users despite the constant criticism of Keynesianism and mainstream economics. When Bitcoiners want to defend theoretically and morally the use of Bitcoin, they turn to your work as a source of inspiration. Nietzsche said that some men are born posthumously. Your growing interest in your ideas shows that perhaps the world was not ready for them when you were alive. Bitcoin, remarkably, is now acting as a gateway drug to your books and philosophy. Even though many libertarians are skeptical of the long term viability of this project and point to the historical track record of gold being used as money, no one can deny the fact that the sole existence and growing adoption of Bitcoin makes people question the absurdities of inflation, fractional reserve banking, legal monopolies, and legal tender laws, and after that, turn to your work to understand more deeply about the civilizational consequence of a degraded form of money. You will certainly be happy to know that fiat today is now a term instantly recognized by younger generations, not as an Italian car brand, but as a degraded, worthless, state sponsored form of money. Given that, I'm certain that Bitcoin will at least capture the attention of your curious mind. You taught us that the state is a criminal enterprise, sustained by the constant violation of property rights. Bitcoin gives every individual on earth a realistic, non-violent way to starve it of one of its vital weapons, the monopoly of money. This is not the end of the libertarian dream. This is the beginning of its most powerful chapter. Murray Rothbard, thank you.